Hey everyone, welcome. Today we're diving into a really remarkable part of the 1987 Philippine Constitution, the state policies in Article 2. And look, this isn't just some dry, boring legal document. It's more like a nation's promise to itself, a declaration of its highest ideals.
So, what's so interesting about it? Well, this constitution isn't just a rulebook. It's a bold statement of a country's dreams. And what really makes it stand out, according to legal scholars, is its powerful, almost unique emphasis on social and economic rights. They're baked right into the foundation of the country.
To really get this, we got to take a step back in time, right? To 1987. The Philippines was fresh off the People Power Revolution, a movement that had just ended 21 years of rule under Ferdinand Marcos. You can just imagine the atmosphere. It was electric with hope and a powerful desire to make sure history never repeated itself. And that historical context is absolutely key. The people writing this new constitution had one major goal: to build a firewall against another dictatorship. To do that, they put this set of guiding state policies right up front in Article 2. Think of it as a permanent blueprint, a roadmap for the kind of society they wanted to build. Okay, so let's dive into this blueprint. And we'll start with how the Philippines sees its place in the world, because these policies really set the tone for everything else. Right off the bat, the Constitution demands an independent foreign policy. The top priorities: national sovereignty and the national interest. It also takes a very firm stand, declaring the country a nuclear weapon-free zone. And get this isn't just a friendly suggestion. It's a direct command from the Constitution itself. Put your own country first.
But the vision goes way deeper than just foreign policy. This single sentence from Section 10, it is so powerful. It makes social justice a non-negotiable part of, well, every single phase of the country's development. It's not an add-on, it's part of the core mission.
So what does that actually mean in practice? It means things like decent social services, jobs for everyone, and a better standard of living. They aren't just things you'd hope for from a politician. Nope. According to the Constitution, they are mandates. The whole point is to build a society that is actively trying to lift people out of poverty and make life better for everyone. Okay, so from these big ideas, the blueprint then zooms in. It gets super specific about protecting the real cornerstones of society. And this part, I think, is really telling. It shows this deep focus on the core building blocks of the nation. It enshrines the family as the basic social institution, it calls out the youth as vital for building the nation, and it flat out guarantees fundamental equality between women and men under the law. I mean, just stop and think about this for a second. How incredibly ahead of its time was this for 1987? The Constitution literally establishes the right to a healthy environment as a fundamental right. It directly connects the nation's well-being to the health of its natural world. That's an idea that a lot of countries are still trying to fully get on board with today.
And this roadmap, it isn't just about rights for the people. It also holds the government to a really, really high standard, both in how it runs itself and in the country's economic life.
Now, this is a pretty profound idea. It says that labor isn't just a cog in the economic machine. The Constitution calls it a primary social economic force. What that boils down to is that the rights of workers, to organize, to get a living wage, to have safe working conditions, all of that is baked right into the Constitution. It's guaranteed. Okay, and this is a big but. Here's where we start to see this huge gap open up between the promise and what's actually happening. Section 26 has this incredibly powerful idea: prohibit political dynasties, to make sure everyone has an equal shot at public service. And yet, here we are, decades later, and no law has ever been passed to actually define what a political dynasty is, let alone ban them. And to really hammer these ideals home, the Constitution is super clear. It doesn't mess around. It flat out demands honesty and integrity from public officials. It commands the state to fight corruption and to be completely transparent with the public about its dealings. I mean, the instructions, the tools, they're all written right there. All right, so you've got this amazing progressive blueprint, right? The big question is, how has the Philippines actually done in making it all happen? And that's where we have to look at the gap between the words on the page and, life on the ground.
So to break this down, experts use a few key terms that are actually really useful. First, you've got thick compliance. That's when the government is really going all in, making strong efforts to make the Constitution's goals a reality. Then there's thin compliance. That's where, yeah, a law might exist, but nobody's really enforcing it properly, so it's pretty weak. And of course, no compliance is, well, exactly what it sounds like.
So let's apply that framework. This table really lays it all out. And it's a fascinating, kind of mixed bag. You can see right at the top, for that anti-political dynasty rule, it's no compliance. For women's rights, thin compliance. But then for labor rights, we see thick compliance, at least in some ways. Let's dig into each one of these, because the story here is really interesting.
So let's start with that big one, the promise to ban political dynasties. The verdict here is pretty brutal. Experts say this isn't even thin compliance. It's basically a total lack of compliance. That constitutional command has pretty much been ignored by lawmakers.
And this really highlights a super important point, right? Just having a law on the books isn't enough. When it comes to the rights of women and other groups, sure, there are policies, but because they aren't implemented well, their real-world impact is pretty limited. It's a classic case of thin compliance. The promise is written down, but it doesn't have much teeth.
Now, on the flip side, we have what looks like a real success story. But, and it's a big but, there's a catch. The courts have shown thick compliance, often siding with workers and directly using the Constitution to protect them. The problem is, this strong protection often only applies to people in the formal economy. It doesn't always reach the millions of workers in the informal sector. So a lot of people are still left out.
So when you look at the whole story, from this revolutionary document to its very mixed results, it leaves us with a really big question. And not just for the Philippines, but for any democracy. A constitution is like a nation's promise to itself, a vision of its best possible future. But it begs the question, what does it actually take to keep that promise?